Introduction. Friends, if you want to watch the super hit crime drama movie Paid in Full from 2002 in English, then make sure to like this video. And if you're visiting our channel for the very first time, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never miss out on any exciting movie updates. Friends, in today's video, we are going to dive deep into the world of Paid in Full. This is not just any movie. It's a gripping tale based on true events, filled with intense drama, powerful performances, and a storyline that will keep you hooked from start to finish. Today, we'll explore what this movie is all about, why it became such a cult classic, and where you can currently watch it online. Whether it's on an OTT platform or on a satellite channel, I will give you complete information on where you can stream or catch this film. So if you've been trying to find Paid in Full, don't worry. By the end of this video, you'll have all the answers. We'll also be taking a closer look at the technical aspects of this film, how it was made, which production companies were involved, how the cinematography adds to the mood of the film, and what kind of music and background score was used to bring the story to life. From the early stages of pre-production all the way to filming, post-production, and release, I'll give you all the behind-the-scenes details. That's not all. We're also going to talk about the budget of this film and how much money it made at the box office. Was it a hit when it came out? How did audiences react? We'll discuss all of that and more. You'll also get a small review of the movie's story without any major spoilers, so you get a clear idea of what kind of movie this is and why so many fans still talk about it even today. And of course, we'll highlight the incredible cast that brought this film to life. From Wood Harris to Mekhi Phifer and Cameron, we'll talk about the performances, the chemistry between the characters, and who played which role. We'll also take a look at some cool facts about the movie, the inspiration behind the characters, and the real-life story that influenced this film. So friends, make sure to watch this video till the very end, because there's a lot of exciting and valuable information coming your way. Let's begin and take a deep dive into the world of Paid in Full. Alright friends, let's jump right into the wild and gritty world of Paid in Full and talk about how this unforgettable story unfolds. Get ready, because this isn't just a straight line, A to B kind of tale. It's a ride through ambition, loyalty, betrayal, and the dark side of chasing the American dream. We kick things off in Harlem, New York, during the 1980s, a time when drug money ruled the streets and hustling was seen as the quickest path to success. Our main character, Ace, played brilliantly by Wood Harris, starts off in a pretty humble position. He's working a boring job at a dry cleaner, folding clothes and minding his business while his friends are out on the streets flashing cash and living large. But here's where things get interesting. Instead of jumping straight into the drug game like so many others, Ace kind of stumbles into it. He's quiet, observant, and cautious, which already makes him stand out from the typical fast-talking street hustler. The turning point comes when Ace discovers a bag of cocaine that belongs to one of his dry cleaning customers. Instead of reporting it or ignoring it, he decides to dip his toes into the game. And just like that, the slow, dramatic rise begins. He starts small, but his smart, calculated moves quickly elevate him from a nobody to a major player in Harlem. Ace isn't flashy like his friend Mitch, played by Mekhi Phifer, who's already deep in the game, or wild like Rico, played by Cameron, whose unpredictable and dangerous nature keeps everyone on edge. Ace's strength is in his cool head and business smarts. He sees the long game, and that's what makes his rise so fascinating to watch. Now, the movie doesn't just stick to a simple rags to riches formula. Oh no, it constantly toys with tension between friendship, loyalty, and ambition. The conflicts start bubbling up as Ace, Mitch, and Rico build their empire. Mitch is the heart of the crew, charismatic, loved by the neighborhood, the kind of guy everyone roots for. Rico, on the other hand, brings the fire and chaos, always ready to push boundaries and cross lines that Ace isn't comfortable with. It's this dynamic between the three that really drives the narrative forward and keeps you glued to the screen. One of the key emotional punches in the film comes when Mitch's little brother, Sonny, is kidnapped. This is the moment that cracks their world wide open. Suddenly, the flashy cars, the money, and the respect mean nothing in the face of personal tragedy. It's no longer just about survival or getting rich. It's about life, death, and the limits of loyalty. You can feel the shift in energy here, as the characters face choices that will change their lives forever. And let's talk about Rico for a second. This guy is like a ticking time bomb. Every time he's on screen, you get the feeling something's about to go wrong. His hunger for power, his recklessness, and his eventual betrayal are what give the second half of the film its sharp edge. Without giving away too much, let's just say that when the trust between these three crumbles, it leads to a domino effect of violence and heartbreak. What makes Paid in Full especially interesting is how it handles perspective. While the story follows Ace, it never feels like it's just his show. We get a real sense of the world these characters live in, the neighborhood, the streets, the families, and the temptation that surrounds them. The movie lets the audience sit inside this world, seeing both the thrill of the hustle and the crushing weight of its consequences. The narrative doesn't play with time in a flashy, non-linear way, but it does use sharp pacing to keep the tension alive. Scenes jump between moments of triumph and scenes of brutal reality, reminding you that the higher these characters climb, the farther they have to fall. And when the fall comes, it hits hard. At its heart, Paid in Full is about choices. The ones that seem small in the moment but end up shaping your entire life. It's about loyalty that turns into betrayal, dreams that become nightmares, and the heavy cost of living fast. You're not just watching a gangster story. You're watching a cautionary tale unfold in slow motion with moments of joy, pain, and heartbreak all woven together. By the end, you're left thinking not just about what happened to these characters, but about why it all went down the way it did. And that's what makes this story so gripping and unforgettable. Let's dive into the characters of Paid in Full because, trust me, they're the beating heart of this movie. This isn't just a story about drugs and money. It's a story about people, their choices, their dreams, their flaws, and the dangerous roads they take. The characters here are rich, layered, and full of life, which is why this film sticks with you long after it's over. First up, we have Ace, played with quiet brilliance by Wood Harris. Ace is not your typical street hustler. He's calm, thoughtful, and observant, the kind of guy who doesn't need to show off or run his mouth to prove his worth. In the beginning, Ace is just a regular guy working at the dry cleaners, watching the flashy drug dealers from the sidelines. But as the story progresses, we watch him transform. Once he steps into the game, he rises quickly, but not because he's reckless or greedy. Ace's real power comes from his ability to stay cool under pressure, make smart moves, and avoid unnecessary heat. His journey is fascinating because you see him go from an outsider to a leader, someone who builds an empire not by force, but by strategy. Yet along the way, you also watch the weight of the game wear him down, forcing him to confront what really matters to him in the end. Then there's Mitch, played by Mekhi Phifer, who brings pure charisma to the screen. Mitch is the golden boy of the streets, loved by the neighborhood, admired by his crew, and completely magnetic. He's the kind of guy who lights up every room he walks into, flashing his smile and his jewelry, living fast and loud. But underneath all that charm, Mitch has real depth. He's loyal to a fault, driven by love for his family, especially his little brother Sonny. And when tragedy strikes, we see a completely different side of Mitch, the pain, the desperation, and the heartbreak that money and reputation can't fix. Mitch's arc is powerful because it shows the human cost of the lifestyle. He's not just a dealer chasing cash. He's a brother, a friend, and ultimately a man trapped by the very world he helped build. And then we have Rico, played with electric intensity by Cameron. Rico is the wild card of the trio, the guy you just can't trust no matter how much fun he seems to be. From the moment Rico enters the picture, you can feel the chaos he brings. He's loud, unpredictable, and hungry for power. While Ace and Mitch have some limits to how far they'll go, Rico doesn't, and that's exactly what makes him so dangerous. Rico's arc is a ticking time bomb. As his ambition grows, his loyalty shrinks, setting off the chain of betrayal that eventually tears everything apart. Watching Rico is like watching a storm come in. You know disaster is coming. You just don't know when it's going to hit. What really makes these characters shine is their relationships with each other. Ace, Mitch, and Rico are more than just business partners. They're a brotherhood, at least at first. The friendship between Ace and Mitch feels genuine. They balance each other out, with Ace's calm balancing Mitch's flash. Rico, at first, is like the spark that makes the crew even stronger, but soon that same spark becomes the flame that burns everything down. You see moments of real affection and loyalty between them, but you also see how ego, jealousy, and ambition start creeping in, poisoning the bond they share. Their relationship is what gives the film its emotional punch, turning a story about crime into a story about brotherhood lost. Even the side characters play an important role in shaping the main story. Sonny, Mitch's little brother, isn't just a background figure. He's the symbol of innocence in this harsh world. His kidnapping shatters the illusion of control Mitch thinks he has and sets off the film's most devastating moment. Ace's girlfriend, Mitch's family, and the people in the neighborhood all help flesh out the world these characters live in, showing us what they're fighting for and what they're risking. By the end of the film, none of these characters are the same as when we first met them. Ace, who once wanted to quietly get ahead, is forced to reckon with what the game has cost him. Mitch, the king of the streets, is brought to his knees by personal loss. Rico, the ambitious upstart, becomes the architect of his own downfall. Their arcs are like three waves crashing into each other, creating a story that's thrilling, tragic, and unforgettable. Watching them evolve is not just entertaining, it's gripping, because every choice they make shapes the fate of everyone around them, and there's no easy way out. Let's talk about the performances in Paid in Full, because, honestly, the cast is a huge reason why this movie hits as hard as it does. This isn't one of those films where people just walk through their roles or play stereotypes. The actors bring so much raw energy and authenticity that you feel like you're right there on the streets of Harlem with them. Every character feels alive, layered, and real, and that's thanks to a cast that truly understood the assignment. First up, Wood Harris as Ace. What a masterclass in understated power. Harris plays Ace as the quiet storm at the center of all the chaos, and that's exactly what makes his performance so captivating. While everyone around him is loud, flashy, and hungry for attention, Ace is the guy who knows when to speak and when to stay silent. Harris gives us a character who is constantly thinking, calculating, and watching, and you can see it all in his eyes, the calm, the fear, the ambition, the exhaustion. It's not an over-the-top performance, but that's what makes it work so beautifully. Ace's transformation from a humble dry cleaning clerk to a drug kingpin feels believable because Harris plays every stage of that journey with honesty and restraint. He's the quiet heart of the film, and without him grounding the story, the whole thing could have easily spun into melodrama. Then we have Mekhi Phifer as Mitch, and let me tell you, he absolutely lights up the screen. Phifer brings so much charisma and charm that you can immediately see why Mitch is the king of his world. He's funny, he's magnetic, he's got that infectious energy that makes you want to hang out with him, even when you know the path he's on is dangerous. But what's really impressive is how Phifer balances that surface-level swagger with the vulnerability underneath. When Mitch faces personal tragedy, especially around his little brother Sonny, Phifer delivers some of the most gut-wrenching moments in the film. There's a particular scene where Mitch breaks down emotionally, and Phifer just rips your heart out. It's raw, real, and unforgettable. His performance gives the film its emotional weight, reminding us that beneath the fast cars and flashy chains, these are real people with real pain. Now let's talk about Cameron as Rico, and wow, what a force of nature. Cameron didn't just play Rico, he became Rico. From the minute he steps on screen, he brings an unpredictable, wild energy that keeps you on edge. Rico is funny, dangerous, reckless, and at times straight up terrifying, and Cameron captures all of that without ever feeling forced. What's so great about his performance is that it feels both natural and explosive. You believe every word that comes out of his mouth, whether he's cracking a joke or making a threat. Rico might not have the emotional depth of Ace or Mitch, but Cameron's performance makes him unforgettable. He's the chaos agent, the character you can't take your eyes off because you're never sure what he'll do next. Even the supporting cast deserves a shout out. The actors playing the friends, girlfriends, family members, and neighborhood figures all help build a world that feels authentic and lived in. The kidnapping plotline around Mitch's little brother Sonny, for example, wouldn't hit as hard without the strong performances from the actors playing Mitch's family. They don't have a ton of screen time, but when they show up, they make you feel the stakes and the heartbreak. What's really special about the performances in Paid in Full is how they all work together to enhance the emotional depth of the story. You're not just watching a crime movie. You're watching a human drama about ambition, friendship, betrayal, and survival. The actors don't just play their parts, they embody them, making every relationship and conflict feel real. Whether it's Ace's cool control, Mitch's heartbreaking charm, or Rico's explosive ambition, these performances pull you into the story and don't let go. It's a perfect example of how the right cast can take a good script and turn it into something unforgettable. Let's talk about the direction of Paid in Full and how director Charles Stone reshapes this film into the gritty, emotional, and unforgettable ride that it is. Right from the opening frames, you can feel that Stone isn't just interested in making another flashy crime drama. He's here to tell a human story, one rooted in loyalty, ambition, and the cost of living fast. The way he balances the glamour of the drug game with the grim reality behind it is where his direction really shines. First off, let's talk about the tone and mood. Stone gives the film a raw, street-level feel, but he never glamorizes the lifestyle. Sure, there are moments when the characters are on top of the world, driving fancy cars, wearing jewelry, throwing money around. But Stone always makes sure you feel the tension lurking just beneath the surface. You can practically smell the danger coming, and that's because Stone carefully controls the mood, shifting between moments of swagger and moments of dread. One minute you're vibing with the crew, laughing along with them, and the next minute the air shifts, the music drops out, and you know something dark is about to go down. Stylistically, Stone keeps things grounded and authentic. He doesn't go overboard with fancy camera tricks or stylized editing. Instead, he lets the streets of Harlem tell their own story. The shot composition is tight and intimate, often pulling you right into the characters' personal spaces, so you feel like you're sitting next to them in the car, at the table, or in the apartment. He uses a lot of handheld camera work that gives the film a documentary-like immediacy, making the audience feel like a fly on the wall. And when the violence comes, and oh, it does come, Stone doesn't turn it into some glossy, choreographed spectacle. It's messy, sudden, and brutal, just like it would be in real life. And that's part of what gives the movie its punch. The pacing is another area where Stone's direction really makes a difference. The film doesn't rush to show Ace's rise to the top. It takes its time, letting the audience sit in those quieter moments where characters are just talking, laughing, or plotting their next move. Stone understands that the real drama isn't just in the drug deals or the shootouts. It's in the relationships, the betrayals, the tension that builds when ambition starts pulling friends apart. By not speeding through those moments, he gives the film emotional weight and lets the characters breathe, making the final act hit even harder when everything starts to fall apart. One of Stone's smartest moves is how he handles perspective. Even though Ace is the main character, the film never feels like it's just about him. Stone gives plenty of space to Mitch and Rico, showing their highs and lows, their motivations, and their spirals. This multi-perspective approach adds layers to the storytelling and gives the audience a full picture of how each character contributes to the rise and fall of their empire. It's not just Ace's world, it's a world of intersecting lives, dreams, and tragedies, and Stone captures that beautifully. Music and sound are also key tools in Stone's direction. The soundtrack is filled with era-appropriate hip-hop and R/&B, giving the film a sense of time and place that's impossible to miss. But Stone knows when to pull back the music and let silence take over, like during tense confrontations or moments of grief, so the audience has no choice but to sit in the discomfort. That kind of restraint takes confidence, and it pays off big in terms of emotional impact. Overall, Stone's direction gives Paid in Full its heartbeat. It's stylish without being flashy, emotional without being melodramatic, and sharp without losing its sense of humanity. By focusing on character, atmosphere, and pacing, Stone doesn't just tell a story about the drug game. He pulls the audience deep into the lives of the people trapped inside it, showing both the allure and the heartbreak in every frame. It's this careful, thoughtful direction that makes the film so much more than just another crime drama and gives it the lasting impact that keeps audiences coming back. The cinematography in Paid in Full is one of the unsung heroes of the film, quietly working its magic to pull you deep into the world of Harlem streets. This isn't a movie that just points the camera and lets the actors do all the work. No. The camera here is like another character in the story, watching, stalking, and sometimes even judging what's happening on screen. From the camera angles to the lighting and framing, every shot feels carefully chosen to heighten the mood, tension, and emotional weight of the moment. Let's start with the camera angles. What's so cool about Paid in Full is how it switches between perspectives to mirror the emotional shifts of the characters. When Ace is starting out, the camera often stays close and intimate, giving us tight shots that pull us right into his world. You can practically feel the claustrophobia of his early life, working in the back of a dry cleaner, longing for something bigger. But as Ace's empire grows, the camera pulls back, giving us wider frames that show him surrounded by money, cars, and people. And yet, even in those wide shots, there's a sense of isolation creeping in. It's subtle, but the cinematography reminds us that no matter how much Ace gains, he's still trapped in a dangerous game. Lighting plays a huge role in setting the mood, and the film knows exactly when to go bright and when to go dark. During the good times, when the money's flowing, the parties are popping, and everyone's on top of the world, the lighting is warm and almost golden, giving everything a kind of hazy glow that makes the lifestyle look seductive and irresistible. But when the story takes darker turns, the lighting shifts dramatically. Shadows start creeping in, nighttime scenes feel colder, and harsh streetlights cut across the frame, giving everything a sharp, dangerous edge. There's a brilliant use of contrast here, the warmth of success against the chill of betrayal and violence. It's a visual cue that even in the brightest moments, darkness is always waiting just around the corner. Framing is another area where the film really flexes its cinematic muscles. Characters are often framed in ways that reflect their emotional states or relationships. Ace, for example, is frequently shown separated from the crowd, even when he's surrounded by people, a reminder that he's carrying a burden no one else sees. Mitch, on the other hand, is usually in the middle of the action, front and center, soaking up the love and attention. Rico, he's often framed at angles that feel just slightly off, tilted or wide, hinting at his unpredictable nature. And when things start to fall apart, the framing gets tighter and more chaotic, mirroring the breakdown of trust between the characters. It's not just pretty camera work, it's visual storytelling at its finest. And yes, there are some visually striking moments that stick with you. One that jumps out is the scene when Ace first starts making serious money. The stacks of cash, the cars, the clothes, the camera lingers on these details, almost seducing the audience the same way the game seduces Ace. But Stone and his cinematographer are too smart to let it become a music video montage. They balance those glossy images with sharp reminders of the danger underneath, often cutting to a shadowy alley, a suspicious glance, or a tense moment that keeps the audience on edge. Another unforgettable visual is the heartbreaking scene where Mitch breaks down over his brother. The camera doesn't pull away or overdramatize it. Instead, it stays close, almost uncomfortably intimate, forcing us to feel every ounce of Mitch's pain. The use of atmosphere throughout the film is fantastic. Whether it's the buzzing energy of a Harlem street corner, the quiet tension of a late-night apartment meeting, or the cold, clinical feel of the hospital, the cinematography shapes each space into more than just a backdrop. It becomes part of the emotional experience. You're not just watching characters move through a city. You're feeling the pulse of that city in every frame. In the end, the cinematography in Paid in Full isn't just about making things look good. It's about making the audience feel everything. It builds atmosphere, heightens tension, and gives beauty even to the darkest corners of the story. It's the kind of visual storytelling that doesn't scream for attention but leaves a lasting impression, weaving itself into the fabric of the film so seamlessly that you can't imagine the story without it. The editing and pacing in Paid in Full play a huge role in why this movie grabs you from the start and doesn't let go. The flow of the film is smooth, But it's not just smooth for the sake of it. It's carefully crafted to mirror the rise and fall of the characters' lives, their friendships, and their empire. Right from the opening scenes, the editing sets the tone with quick, efficient cuts that pull you into Ace's world. We move from his dead-end job at the dry cleaner to the intoxicating pull of the streets, with a rhythm that feels both urgent and natural. There's no time wasted setting up the stakes, but it also doesn't feel rushed. The transitions between scenes are seamless, often blending conversations, street shots, and personal moments in a way that feels organic, almost like you're walking through the neighborhood yourself, overhearing snippets of life. When Ace and his crew start climbing the ladder, the pacing picks up, matching the adrenaline rush of the drug game. The editing tightens, the scenes come faster, and the energy ramps up. You feel the momentum, the sense that everything is moving fast and getting out of control. But what's really impressive is how the film knows when to slam on the brakes. It doesn't let the audience get too comfortable in the high life. Just when you're vibing along with the characters, the editing slows down, stretches out a conversation, lingers on a worried look, or cuts to a quiet, tense moment that lets the weight of their choices sink in. This push and pull rhythm is key to the film's emotional impact because it gives you time to process the characters' fears, doubts, and heartbreak between the fast-paced hustle. There's also a sharpness to the way the film handles its turning points. Major shifts in the story, betrayals, deaths, moments of realization, are often marked by sudden changes in pacing. A scene will build slowly, tension crawling up the walls, and then bam, everything explodes in a burst of fast cuts, sharp angles, and jarring transitions. But it's not chaos for chaos's sake. The editing is always purposeful, designed to put you in the character's emotional state. When Mitch's world crumbles, the rhythm of the film shatters along with him. When Ace starts to feel the pressure of the game, the editing gets tighter, more claustrophobic, making you feel the walls closing in. The pacing works like an emotional metronome, keeping time with the rise and collapse of dreams. The film also nails the art of tension building through editing. There are scenes where nothing is said for long stretches, but the way the shots are cut together, a glance here, a pause there, a sudden shift in perspective, keeps you on the edge of your seat. It's not just about what's happening. It's about how the editing makes you anticipate what's coming next. And when the emotional moments hit, the film isn't afraid to slow everything down, letting the actors' performances breathe without cutting away too soon. This is especially true in the aftermath of big tragedies, where the pace drops to a crawl, forcing the audience to sit with the discomfort and heartbreak. Even the montages and time jumps feel thoughtful. They don't just rush through important plot points. They capture the vibe and energy of the moment while still moving the story forward. Whether it's a rise to power sequence or a moment of personal reflection, the editing finds the right balance between style and substance. It keeps you engaged without ever feeling like you're watching filler. Overall, the editing and pacing in Paid in Full are like the pulse of the movie, sometimes fast and electric, sometimes slow and heavy, always tuned to the beat of the characters' lives. It's the kind of rhythm that pulls you in, holds you tight, and leaves you breathless by the end, making sure that every emotional punch lands exactly where it's supposed to. The soundtrack and score in Paid in Full are not just background noise. They're an emotional engine, a mood setter, and at times, a straight-up character in the story. From the very first beat, the music starts building the world of 1980s Harlem, wrapping you in the sound of the streets, the hustle, and the heartbreak. And it doesn't just slap you with nostalgia, it guides your emotions, underscores every turning point, and makes sure you feel what the characters are feeling without a single word needing to be said. Let's talk about the soundtrack first. It's rich, it's gritty, and it's loaded with hip-hop, R/B, and soul that speak directly to the era and the environment. The music doesn't feel like a playlist slapped on top of the movie. It feels like it's woven right into the DNA of the characters. When you hear a track drop during a scene where Ace is leveling up in the game, or Mitch is flexing in front of the crew, it doesn't just sound cool. It elevates the scene, makes it pulse with swagger and urgency. The beats aren't just there for style. They're there to reflect the internal state of the characters. When they're winning, the music feels like a victory lap. When they're spiraling, the tone shifts. Suddenly, The tracks feel heavier, slower, more introspective, like the soundtrack itself is going through the same emotional roller coaster. There are some standout needle drop moments that stick in your head long after the credits roll. Whether it's a track blasting during a tense car ride or a slow jam creeping in during a moment of reflection or betrayal, the song choices are deliberate and razor sharp. They're not just chosen because they fit the time period, they're chosen because they hit you in the gut. You could close your eyes during certain scenes and still know exactly what's happening emotionally just from the music alone. That's how powerful the soundtrack is. But it's not just about the big musical moments. The film also knows when to let silence speak. There are scenes, like when someone dies, or when a character is facing a personal crisis, where the music fades out and leaves you in raw, uncomfortable quiet. And that silence, it's deafening in the best way. It makes you lean in, hold your breath, feel the weight of the moment without distraction. That kind of restraint is rare and shows how much thought went into the sound design. It's not just about flooding the audience with noise. It's about choosing the perfect moment to let the music carry you, and the perfect moment to leave you stranded in silence. The actual score, when it's used, is subtle but effective. It's like an invisible thread stitching scenes together, giving everything an emotional undercurrent that you might not even notice consciously, but you definitely feel it. The score doesn't try to outshine the actors or the story. It creeps in when needed, adds tension, sorrow, or warmth, and then melts away. This kind of scoring is like seasoning in a dish. Just the right amount makes everything richer without overpowering the flavor. There are recurring musical motifs that reinforce themes of ambition, loyalty, and regret. You might hear a certain melody early in the film when everything's hopeful and fresh, then hear a darker variation of that same melody later when things have gone south. It's a subtle way of reminding you where the characters started and how far they've fallen. The music becomes a mirror of the emotional journey, echoing what's happening on screen in a way that's more powerful than words. Overall, the soundtrack and score in Paid in Full are masterfully used to not only complement the story, but to deepen it. Every beat, every silence, every song serves a purpose. Whether it's amplifying a high-stakes moment or quietly breaking your heart in the background, the music in this film doesn't just set the mood. It becomes part of the storytelling fabric. It's what makes you nod your head during the highs and clutch your chest during the lows. It's not just heard, it's felt. Paid in Full is not just a story about money, power, and the fast life. It's a deep dive into the complex world of loyalty, ambition, and the human cost of trying to make it big. The film doesn't just show you a bunch of guys hustling on the streets. It makes you feel the weight of their choices, the pressure of their dreams, and the inevitability of their downfalls. What's so brilliant about the way the film explores these themes is how seamlessly they are woven into the narrative, without feeling like the filmmakers are trying to shove a message down your throat. It's all about subtlety, reflection, and the consequences of those decisions that seem so harmless at first. One of the core themes that runs through the entire film is loyalty, and how fragile it is when greed and power enter the equation. Ace, Mitch, and Rico's relationships are at the heart of this story, and watching them evolve or devolve as their paths grow more tangled with money and betrayal is gut-wrenching. You see these characters at the beginning, bound together by shared struggles and ambitions, but as they get deeper into the game, the cracks begin to show. You can feel that tension building, like a pressure cooker ready to explode. Loyalty is tested, stretched, and ultimately broken, and you're left wondering how much of it was ever real to begin with. It's a heartbreaking exploration of how success, especially the kind built on illegal foundations, doesn't just tear apart friendships, it turns people into strangers, even when they've known each other their entire lives. Then, there's the theme of ambition, and the price that comes with it. Ace's rise from a small-time worker to a big-time player in the drug game is the classic rags to riches story. But the film doesn't let you forget the darker side of that story. Every win feels tainted by the sacrifice it demands. The more Ace gets, the more he loses, whether it's his peace of mind, his friendships, or his sense of self. The movie makes sure you understand that the pursuit of power and wealth in this world is a double-edged sword. Every time Ace feels like he's on top, the world is just waiting to knock him back down. It's a brutal commentary on how the thirst for more money, more respect, more control, can consume you until nothing is left but regret and emptiness. You're constantly reminded that getting what you want doesn't guarantee happiness. It often leads to a whole new set of problems. The film also touches on the idea of destiny and the paths people choose. In a way, Paid in Full asks, how much control do we really have over our lives? The characters make choices, but sometimes those choices seem driven by forces outside their control. The neighborhood, the people around them, the opportunities or lack of them. It all plays a role in pushing them toward their fates. Ace doesn't start out wanting to be a drug kingpin. He's just trying to get out, trying to live a better life. But as the options narrow, the lines blur between right and wrong, and he ends up becoming the very thing he once feared. It's a sobering look at how people can be shaped by their environments, forced into decisions that ultimately define who they become. In a sense, the movie suggests that sometimes the pursuit of a better life can pull you down a road you never planned to take, with consequences you can't undo. And, of course, there's the theme of betrayal, which is woven into the story like a dark thread. As the characters rise, so does the tension between them. The closer they get to the top, the more they're faced with hard choices about loyalty, trust, and survival. When the inevitable betrayals happen, and believe me, they happen, it's not just about who gets double-crossed or who survives. It's about how those betrayals ripple outward, changing everyone they touch. What's so powerful here is that the betrayal doesn't just happen between enemies. It happens between friends, between people who should have each other's backs. And that's what makes it so devastating. It's not just a plot point. It's a reminder of how easily trust can be broken when the stakes get too high. The film doesn't offer any neat, packaged answers to these themes. It leaves you with more questions than resolutions, and that's part of what makes it so effective. It forces you to sit with the consequences of these characters' decisions and really think about the choices you'd make in their shoes. Would you play the game knowing the price? Could you stay loyal when the temptation of power is right there in front of you? Would you be able to walk away before it's too late? These themes don't just hit you in the head. They hit you in the gut. Paid in Full doesn't just explore the drug game. It explores the psychology of the people trapped inside it, the dreams that drive them, and the betrayals that break them. It's a raw, unflinching look at what happens when you try to chase the American dream at any cost. In Paid in Full, visual effects and CGI are about as subtle as they come. This isn't the kind of movie that relies on flashy digital wizardry to wow the audience. Instead, the film stays grounded in its gritty, street-level realism, where the focus is on the characters, their lives, and the world around them, not on CGI-enhanced spectacles. That said, when visual effects do make an appearance, they serve a purpose, adding to the story in a way that feels natural rather than distracting. The practical effects, like the car chases, the gunfights, and the occasional brutal confrontation, are where the film really shines. These moments are raw, real, and impactful. When Ace and his crew are in the middle of a heated exchange or a tense standoff, the action is immediate, visceral, and up close. The practical effects here don't need to be high-tech or digitally altered. They rely on the rawness of the environment and the actors' performances to sell the tension. The sound design, the physicality of the fights, and the street-level chaos all hit much harder because there's nothing artificial about them. Now, where CGI and digital effects come into play is more in the background, enhancing the world without taking over it. For instance, during certain time transitions or when the story moves through a montage of Ace's rise in the drug game, there might be subtle digital enhancements to emphasize the passing of time or to set the tone for specific moments. But these effects are more about enhancing the atmosphere than showing off digital prowess. It's not about flashy explosions or unrealistic stunts. It's about creating an emotional landscape that feels bigger than just the physical space the characters occupy. The CGI is used sparingly, and when it is, it's often to highlight the internal tension or emotional shifts, whether that's a moment of loneliness or the overwhelming weight of Ace's decisions. In comparison to the practical effects, the digital ones feel almost invisible. There's no moment in Paid in Full where you feel like the special effects team went overboard. pulling you out of the world and into a spectacle. This is a film that knows how to use effects to enhance immersion without overshadowing the story. For example, instead of creating CGI explosions or mind-bending stunts, the film might enhance a moment with a digital effect that subtly changes the tone. Maybe a quick flash of light or a shift in color during a particularly intense scene. These moments don't demand attention. They quietly work to reinforce what's already happening on screen. The most effective visual effects in Paid in Full are the ones you don't even notice at first. They're seamlessly integrated into the environment, making you feel like you're in the same gritty world as Ace, Mitch, and Rico. The film is about people, not gadgets, and the effects enhance that central focus. The subtle use of CGI, combined with the tactile, real-world effects, creates a blend of immersion that doesn't feel artificial, but instead feels like it belongs in the world the filmmakers have created. At the end of the day, the visual effects in Paid in Full are a supporting player, working quietly in the background to make the film feel real and grounded. They're not there to dazzle or distract. They're there to help tell the story, adding depth to the world without ever pulling focus. In a film like this, where the human drama is the star, the visual effects are at their best when they're nearly invisible, supporting the narrative rather than overshadowing it. In Paid in Full, the set design and locations do more than just serve as a backdrop for the action. They breathe life into the story, adding texture and authenticity to every scene. The filmmakers clearly understood that the world of the film is just as much a character as the people in it. From the gritty streets of Harlem to the dingy apartments, the locations are meticulously chosen to reflect the harsh realities the characters face, and they become an integral part of the narrative itself. The film doesn't need to reinvent the wheel with extravagant sets. Instead, it captures the true essence of its environment, pulling you into a world that feels lived in, raw, and unpolished. Every street corner, every alley, every apartment is a reflection of the choices the characters make and the lives they lead. The locations are meticulously crafted to show the contrast between the grind of everyday life and the allure of the fast-paced, high-stakes drug game. The neighborhoods are not romanticized. They're gritty, sometimes grimy, but always real. The worn-out, cramped apartments where Ace and his friends struggle to make it out of the cycle of poverty feel claustrophobic and suffocating, while the bright lights and shiny, high-rise buildings of success feel almost cold and detached. The locations aren't just places where scenes happen. They're visual metaphors for the characters' internal worlds. When Ace is stuck in a tight spot, the physical space around him feels tight, too. The props and production design also add to this sense of realism. From the old-school cars cruising through the streets to the worn-out furniture in Ace's apartment, the attention to detail is impeccable. These aren't just props. They're objects that the characters interact with that tell you something about where they are in their lives. The stacks of cash, the jewelry, the weapons, each prop is a symbol of power, temptation, and the price of the lifestyle. But it's not all glitz and glam. When things start falling apart, the locations and props take on a more somber tone, underscoring the emptiness that comes with it. The crackling neon lights of the street corner where the deals go down are a perfect contrast to the moments of solitude that happen in quiet apartments, where the weight of the choices made is felt more deeply. What really stands out in Paid in Full is how the locations enhance the emotional beats of the film. Take the nightclub scenes, for instance. These places are loud, flashy, and full of energy, a perfect visual representation of the highs of the drug game. But when the camera lingers on the characters, you see a different side. The flashy lights feel a little too bright, the crowds a little too loud, and you get the sense that these moments of celebration are fleeting and hollow. These locations aren't just settings, they're mirrors to the inner turmoil the characters are experiencing, adding layers to the story in ways that words can't. Even the streets themselves, the gritty backdrop of Harlem, take on a life of their own. The hustle is everywhere, in the cracks of the sidewalk, in the faces of the people moving through it, in the way the camera glides down a dimly lit alleyway or catches the tension in a street corner conversation. The locations aren't just places where the action happens. They're living, breathing parts of the story, shaping the characters as much as the script does. But it's not all about the tough streets. The film also uses specific locations to show the characters' shifting aspirations. When Ace starts seeing the money roll in, there's a marked shift in his surroundings. The cars get shinier, the apartments bigger, the lighting brighter. But even then, there's an underlying sense of isolation in these spaces. The high-rise office buildings where deals are struck feel almost cold, sterile, a stark contrast to the warmth of the small, family-like environment that Ace once had with Mitch and Rico. It's a visual representation of the emptiness that comes with success, of how the higher you climb, the more alone you feel. In the end, Paid in Full doesn't just tell a story through its characters' actions and dialogue. It tells it through the world they inhabit. The set design and locations are far more than mere decoration. They're an essential part of the film's storytelling. Every location, every prop, every detail is chosen with care to reinforce the emotional landscape of the film. From the gritty streets to the gleaming high-rise offices, these settings provide a visual language that speaks just as loudly as the characters themselves. They help make the story feel lived in and real, grounding you in a world that's both familiar and unforgiving, much like the lives of the characters who walk through it. The dialogue in Paid in Full is more than just words spoken between characters. It's the lifeblood of the film, capturing the raw essence of street life, ambition, and betrayal. The script doesn't waste time with unnecessary fluff. Every line serves a purpose, either driving the plot forward or digging deeper into the characters' motivations. It's the kind of dialogue that feels like it's been ripped straight from the streets, unpolished and real. But at the same time, every word carries weight. There's a rhythm to it, a flow that feels natural and authentic to the world these characters inhabit. Ace's lines are often understated, but packed with meaning. He's not a man of many words, but when he speaks, you feel the weight of his decisions hanging in the air. His dialogue reflects his inner conflict, torn between loyalty and the lure of success, between staying true to his roots and becoming something else entirely. When Ace talks about wanting more, about dreaming bigger than the life he knows, you don't just hear his words, you feel his hunger. There's a quiet intensity in his delivery, making every conversation with him feel charged, even when he's not saying much. Then there's Mitch, whose dialogue is a bit more playful, but no less impactful. He's the friend who's always there to crack a joke or lighten the mood. But underneath the humor, you can feel his desperation. His lines often walk that fine line between levity and darkness, and that duality makes his character so compelling. When Mitch speaks, you know he's trying to navigate the tension between the fast life he's caught up in and the reality that it could all come crashing down at any moment. His dialogue reflects that tension perfectly, giving you just enough of a glimpse into his mind without fully giving away his cards. And of course, Rico, the wild card. Rico's lines are sharp, direct, and often dangerous. He's the one who doesn't hold back, whose words are as blunt as his actions. His dialogue has an edge to it, making him one of the most unpredictable characters in the film. When Rico speaks, there's no filter. He says what he's thinking, regardless of how it might affect others. His sharpness adds a layer of tension to every scene he's in. His words are as much a weapon as his actions, and that makes him a truly memorable character. But it's not just about the main characters. The supporting cast also delivers some standout lines that give the film its emotional depth. The way characters like Lulu and Ace's mother interact with him gives us a glimpse into his humanity, reminding us that he's not just a product of the streets. These exchanges are often poignant, showing us the man beneath the ambition, the loyalty, and the ambition that often drive him. The dialogue between these secondary characters may not carry the same weight as the main players, but it fills in the emotional gaps, making the world of the film feel lived in and complex. There are also some moments of sharp wit scattered throughout the film, not just from the main characters, but from the supporting ones as well. These lines often come as a relief from the tension of the more dramatic scenes, giving the audience a moment to laugh or smile before the weight of the next moment hits. But even in these moments of humor, the script doesn't shy away from the underlying tension. There's a dark edge to the humor in Paid in Full, as if the characters are using wit to mask the anxiety and fear they're constantly living with. It's a reminder that in this world, laughter is often a defense mechanism, not a genuine expression of joy. As for memorable lines, Paid in Full is full of them. Some are subtle, like a simple remark that sticks with you long after the scene is over, and others are more in your face, like those moments where a character drops a line that completely changes the direction of the plot. The game's cold, man, is a line that resonates throughout the film. It's simple, but it sums up the entire atmosphere of the story. That the world these characters live in is unforgiving, and there's no room for sentimentality or weakness. Another standout line comes when Ace reflects on the choices he's made. I just want to get out, man. These lines hit with such emotional weight because they tap into the universal desire for something more, for a way out of a life that feels like it's closing in. The longing in Ace's voice, the way he says it, makes you feel the suffocating pressure of his environment. It's the kind of line that sticks with you because it encapsulates so much about the character and his journey in just a few words. Overall, the dialogue in Paid in Full is a masterclass in understatement. It's sharp, it's raw, and it's full of meaning, even when the characters aren't saying much. The script never feels forced or unnatural, and it never tries too hard to impress you with cleverness. Instead, it lets the characters speak in a way that feels true to who they are. Each line is carefully crafted to reveal something about the characters, their motivations, and the world they inhabit, making every conversation, every exchange, feel important. The memorable lines, the wit, and the emotional moments are all woven together to create a script that feels as real and intense as the lives these characters are leading. Paid in Full doesn't just follow the conventions of the crime and drama genre. It plays with them, bends them, and keeps you guessing every step of the way. It's a film that's deeply rooted in the crime drama tradition, but it doesn't settle for easy cliches or tropes. Yes, you've got your rise and fall story arc, your ambitious protagonist trying to escape the streets, and the inevitable consequences that come with the fast life. But it's how Paid in Full handles these familiar elements that sets it apart from other films in the genre. The film subverts expectations in the way it approaches the get-rich-quick trope. In many crime dramas, the protagonist's rise to power is often glorified, with flashy cars, beautiful women, and everything else that screams success. But in Paid in Full, there's an underlying sense of dread in every success. The more Ace climbs, the more isolated he feels, the more detached he becomes from the things that used to matter. Instead of the glitz and glam of the drug trade, the film emphasizes the emptiness that accompanies wealth and power. It's not just about the chase for money, it's about what it costs, and that cost is written into the very fabric of the film. The action in Paid in Full is sharp, quick, and intense, but it never feels over the top or excessive. You won't find massive shootouts or car chases that go on for 15 minutes. The action is grounded, and that's what makes it so effective. When things go down, they go down fast and hard. The action is often driven by tension, by characters who are about to snap, or make a decision that will change everything. The suspense is real because it's tied to the choices the characters are making, not just to random events or external forces. This creates a sense of urgency and danger in every scene, even when there's no physical action happening. But it's not all grit and violence. The film knows when to pull back and let moments of humor or lightheartedness shine through. Mitch, for example, is the comic relief, but his humor never feels out of place. It's a defense mechanism, a way for him to cope with the chaos around him. His lines are funny, yes, but they also serve to show the cracks in his character, his inner conflict, and his struggle to stay afloat in a world that's spiraling out of control. The humor never distracts from the drama. It complements it, adding depth to the characters and their relationships. What Paid in Full really excels at is blending all these elements together: action, suspense, humor, and drama, in a way that feels seamless. There's never a moment where the tone feels off or where one genre takes over the others. The tension of the crime drama is always there, but it's balanced by the quiet moments of personal reflection, the humor that breaks the tension, and the moments of action that escalate the stakes. The film doesn't force humor where it doesn't belong, and it doesn't drown you in constant action. Instead, it lets each element breathe, giving you just enough of each to keep you invested in the character's journey. In terms of fresh ideas, Paid in Full doesn't necessarily break the mold of the crime genre, but it refines it. The film doesn't glamorize the drug trade. Instead, it shows the consequences of that life in a way that's both visceral and emotional. It takes the familiar formula of the rags to riches story and flips it on its head, making you question what success really means. The tension doesn't just come from external threats, it comes from within the characters themselves. Their internal struggles, their desires, and their choices are what drive the plot forward. And that's what makes the film stand out. One of the film's strengths is how it takes the audience through the highs and lows of the characters' lives without ever making them feel like they're being lectured or preached at. It doesn't hit you over the head with moral lessons about the dangers of the streets or the emptiness of wealth. Instead, it lets the characters' actions and decisions speak for themselves. The film asks you to come to your own conclusions about the cost of success, about what happens when you're willing to do whatever it takes to make it out. The pacing of the film also plays into its genre execution. It doesn't rush through the beats of the story, nor does it drag. There's a steady rhythm to the way the plot unfolds, with each turn of the story feeling earned and organic. When the tension builds, it builds slowly, and when it finally erupts, it's all the more impactful. The film knows when to push forward and when to slow down, allowing you to fully invest in the characters and their journeys. Overall, Paid in Full doesn't just play by the rules of the crime drama genre, it challenges them. It takes what we expect from films about the streets, wealth, and ambition, and twists it in ways that are both surprising and satisfying. It balances action, suspense, humor, and drama in a way that feels fresh and engaging. Instead of falling into the traps of cliché, it carves out its own path, offering a narrative that's as emotionally compelling as it is action-packed. Paid in Full, 2002, doesn't just offer a snapshot of life in Harlem during the late 80s and early 90s. It dives deep into the complex web of social and cultural issues that were simmering beneath the surface of urban America at the time. This film takes you into the gritty world of drug dealing, the lure of fast money, and the realities of growing up in a world where choices seem limited. But what makes it more than just a crime drama is how it explores the broader societal forces that push young men into these dangerous lifestyles. The film's central theme revolves around the quest for success and recognition. Ace, Mitch, and Rico, three childhood friends with very different approaches to life, are all in search of something. For Ace, it's a desire to escape his humble beginnings and make something of himself. For Mitch, it's about status and the ability to flaunt his success. For Rico, it's pure survival. In a world where wealth and power seem to be the only ways out of poverty, the pressure to get rich quick is almost inescapable, and the film doesn't shy away from showing the moral compromises and personal tragedies that come with this pursuit. What's especially interesting about Paid in Full is how it handles the cultural influences that shape the characters' decisions. Harlem, with its history of jazz, art, and political movements, provides a backdrop where the dreams of the characters are informed by a mix of ambition, frustration, and the belief that the American dream is within reach, if only through illicit means. The film doesn't suggest that this path is the only one available, but it does paint a vivid picture of why, for many, it's the only realistic option. At the same time, Paid in Full doesn't gloss over the consequences of this lifestyle. While the characters are living large for a time, the eventual unraveling of their lives serves as a stark reminder of the dangers that come with living on the edge of the law. The drug trade is shown as a high-stakes game, one where loyalty is fleeting and violence is an ever-present threat. The film's depiction of Rico's rise and fall is particularly telling. His increasing ruthlessness is a commentary on how desperation can turn even the most innocent into monsters. The movie also subtly critiques the broader systems of inequality, racial, economic, and institutional, that contribute to these cycles of poverty and crime. It doesn't get preachy or overtly political, but the message is clear. The characters aren't just victims of their own choices, but of a system that offers them few viable alternatives. In this sense, the film acts as a kind of social commentary, asking us to look beyond the surface and consider the systemic forces that drive individuals into dangerous paths. The film also explores friendship, loyalty, and betrayal with real emotional depth. In a world where trust is a currency, the characters' relationships are constantly in flux. Ace, Mitch and Rico's bond is one of the central emotional threads, and watching how it disintegrates as their lives spiral out of control adds layers of complexity to the narrative. The tragedy here is not just about the loss of wealth or status, but about the destruction of relationships that were once solid. The way Paid in Full handles these sensitive themes is both natural and effective. It doesn't feel forced because it doesn't try to lecture or preach to the audience. Instead, it presents the world and its characters in a way that's raw, authentic, and, at times, heartbreaking. It lets the audience draw their own conclusions about the choices the characters make and the consequences that follow. This nuanced approach ensures that the film resonates on multiple levels, from the personal to the political, without ever feeling heavy-handed. It's a story that sticks with you not just because of the flashy cars and designer clothes, but because of the underlying commentary on ambition, survival, and the price of success in a world that often seems stacked against you. Paid in Full doesn't just tell a story, it pulls you into its world and makes you feel every moment. The emotions in this film are raw, real, and unrelenting, and they hit you hard, especially if you've ever wondered what it's like to chase after success with no roadmap, just hunger and desperation. It's the kind of movie that doesn't just entertain, but sticks with you, lingering long after the credits roll. From the opening scene, the tension is palpable. You're not just watching a character. You're feeling his struggle, his desire to escape the constraints of his environment. Ace, played by Wood Harris, is the epitome of quiet ambition. You feel the weight of his decisions every time he hesitates or takes a step into the unknown. The way his internal conflict plays out is compelling. It's not the brash, in-your-face emotions you might expect from a crime drama, but rather a slow-burning intensity that's all the more powerful for being understated. This makes his moments of decision, when he finally takes the plunge into the drug game, feel like an emotional gut punch. You can feel his hope, fear, and even a sense of inevitability all at once. And then there's Mitch. He brings a sense of brashness and swagger that cuts through the tension. His moments, whether it's his confidence, his struggle with loyalty, or his eventual heartbreak, are some of the film's most emotionally charged. His relationship with Ace is one of the film's most heart-wrenching points. Their friendship seems unshakable until the pressures of the world around them begin to tear it apart. The moments of vulnerability that peek through Mitch's hard exterior create a sense of empathy that catches you off guard, especially when you realize how much he's willing to risk for a sense of belonging. Then, of course, there's Rico. His rise and fall are both exhilarating and tragic. His rapid descent into violence and betrayal is shocking, and you can't help but feel a mixture of anger, pity, and disbelief as you watch him spiral. His character stirs up strong emotions, his recklessness brings a level of tension that keeps you on edge throughout, and his eventual fate is as devastating as it is inevitable. It's one of those moments that leaves you questioning how much blame can be placed on the individual versus the environment that shaped them. This is a film that forces you to confront uncomfortable truths, and in doing so, it stirs a reaction that lingers long after the credits roll. But it's not just the big emotional moments that resonate. The film's quieter, more introspective scenes also hit hard. The small moments of camaraderie, the silent glances between Ace and Mitch, or the brief moments of joy that come with success, feel like fleeting glimpses of hope before everything unravels. They make the inevitable loss feel even more profound. The film doesn't just leave you with the tragedy of their lives, it leaves you with the haunting question of what might have been if they had made different choices. And yes, this film invites you to watch it again. Paid in Full doesn't give up all its secrets on the first viewing. Every time you watch it, you notice something new, whether it's a subtle piece of dialogue, a fleeting expression, or a shift in the dynamics between the characters. It's one of those films that gets richer the more you reflect on it, and it sparks discussion every time. You'll find yourself wondering, what would I have done in their place? Or how much of their fate was in their control? It's the kind of movie that forces you to think, and that's what makes it such a powerful emotional experience. It engages you on a level that goes beyond just being entertained. It makes you reflect on the world, on the choices we make, and the forces that shape us. Paid in Full doesn't just entertain, it challenges provokes, and moves you in ways that you won't easily forget. It's a film that demands repeat viewings, not just for the plot, but for the emotional journey it takes you on each time. It's a story that doesn't end when the screen fades to black. It stays with you, calling you back to reconsider, reflect, and feel all over again. When you think about crime dramas from the early 2000s, Paid in Full stands out, not just as a product of its time, but as a film that manages to carve out its own identity amidst a sea of gritty, street-focused narratives. If you're looking for a comparison, Scarface is often the first name that comes up. Both are tales of ambition, violence, and the corrupting influence of the drug trade. But here's the thing. Paid in Full doesn't reach for the over-the-top, larger-than-life narrative that Scarface embraced. There's no oversized mansion, no larger-than-life villain, no grand spectacle. Instead, it's a grounded, more intimate tale that focuses on the real emotional cost of chasing that elusive dream. In terms of formula, you could say Paid in Full follows a similar structure to a lot of rise and fall stories in the genre, where characters start from humble beginnings and gradually climb the criminal ladder. The appeal of fast money and luxury is ever present, with the inevitable downfall hanging like a dark cloud over the horizon. Think of films like New Jack City or Menace to Society, which also explore the vicious cycle of crime and its destructive toll on those involved. But where Paid in Full distinguishes itself is in its portrayal of its characters. Ace, Mitch, and Rico are not larger-than-life gangsters. They're more like your average guy just trying to survive in a world that doesn't give them many options. Their flaws, vulnerabilities, and moral conflicts make them relatable, which is something that sets this movie apart from the more typical cartoonish depictions of crime you sometimes see in the genre. Director Charles Stone III, known for his work in both film and commercials, brings a slightly different flavor to Paid in Full. While it's not as flashy or stylized as some of his other works, the emotional depth he gets out of the performances is what really makes the film pop. In many ways, it feels more like a documentary of Harlem life than a traditional movie. You're drawn into the rawness of the environment, the small details, the way characters move, talk, and react to one another, giving you a sense of realism that makes the film feel immediate and personal. It's not so much about the spectacle of the story, but about the human drama playing out at street level. The film doesn't have the self-aware coolness that we sometimes associate with gangster flicks of the 2000s, like The Wire or Breaking Bad, which subvert expectations and delve deep into character psychology. Instead, Paid in Full sticks closer to the basics, the choices people make when they're hungry for something more, and the toll it takes when you push those choices to the extreme. It's a much more stripped-back experience, one that leaves you reflecting on the ripple effects of those choices, especially when so many other films in the genre are quick to glorify them. Another film you could throw into the comparison mix is Boys and the Hood. Both films are essentially about young men trying to navigate the dangerous and oppressive world around them. While Boys in the Hood is a broader social commentary on race, class, and the challenges of growing up in South Central LA, Paid in Full is more specific to Harlem and the allure of fast wealth through drug dealing. What it shares with Boys in the Hood is that it doesn't glamorize the lifestyle. It shows it for what it is, a path that promises everything, but takes everything in return. But while Boys in the Hood is more focused on the external pressures from the environment, Paid in Full zooms in on the internal conflicts of the characters themselves, making their downfall feel all the more tragic. The film also has the rawness of Straight Outta Compton, though not in the same biographical sense. The focus here is more on friendship and loyalty, and the tug-of-war between these emotional ties and the seductive pull of the streets. While Straight Outta Compton centers on the rise of N.W/A and the music industry, Paid in Full is about the dangerous allure of street life and how quickly everything can unravel once you're in too deep. Both films emphasize how external success doesn't shield you from the internal chaos that can erupt from greed, betrayal, and the weight of your own decisions. What Paid in Full offers that feels fresh is its honest portrayal of ambition without glamorizing it. It doesn't set out to be a big-budget spectacle or a flashy crime epic. Instead, it focuses on the quiet moments of realization, like when Ace begins to question his involvement in the drug trade, and how those moments are often overshadowed by the immediate pressures of survival. that sense of internal conflict, and the weight of choice doesn't get as much screen time in other films of its kind. Here, it's a slow burn, the emotional intensity building as you watch the characters grapple with the consequences of their actions. So, while Paid in Full fits into a familiar genre framework, it never fully conforms to the expectations laid out by films that have come before it. It's not about the glamorous rise to power, nor is it about the glorification of a criminal lifestyle. It's a movie about real people making difficult decisions in an unforgiving world, and that's what makes it stand out. Paid in Full is a film that's layered with symbolism, and if you look closely, you'll find that every visual detail carries weight. It's not just about the story of young men getting caught up in the drug trade. It's a subtle commentary on the price of ambition, the illusion of escape, and the trap of living in a cycle of poverty. The symbolism is woven throughout the narrative, and it enhances the film's emotional depth, making it much more than a simple street-level crime drama. Take the setting of Harlem itself. It's not just a backdrop, but a character in its own right. The neighborhood's gritty streets and narrow alleys are symbolic of the limitations placed on the characters. It's a place where the characters are constantly reminded of their roots, yet they are also trapped in them. The world outside Harlem seems distant, almost unreachable, and the only way to escape is through the dangerous and ultimately destructive world of drug dealing. Harlem represents both opportunity and entrapment, a paradox that fuels the characters' dreams and ultimately leads to their downfall. Then there's the recurring motif of money and the luxurious trappings that come with it. Flashy cars, expensive clothes, and stacks of cash are symbols of success, but they are also symbols of corruption and the false promise of happiness. For Ace, Mitch, and Rico, the allure of money is all-consuming. It's a symbol of freedom, power, and escape, but the film makes it clear that these things come at a high cost. As the characters chase after the dream of wealth, they begin to lose sight of what truly matters: friendship, loyalty, and their own humanity. Money, in this case, becomes a metaphor for the emotional and moral bankruptcy that accompanies the pursuit of power in a world where survival is the main goal. The characters themselves are also walking metaphors. Ace, the more reserved and thoughtful of the group, represents the internal struggle between doing what's right and doing what's necessary to survive. His gradual descent into the world of drugs reflects the way ambition can cloud one's moral compass. Mitch, on the other hand, is the embodiment of the quick rise to success. His flashy personality and love for the high life symbolize the temptations that come with sudden wealth. But it's Rico, the most unpredictable of the three, who embodies the darker side of ambition. He represents the dangers of greed, recklessness, and the inability to control one's desires. His spiral into violence and betrayal is the ultimate metaphor for the self-destructive nature of unchecked ambition. Another striking element of symbolism comes from the portrayal of loyalty. Early in the film, the bond between Ace, Mitch, and Rico feels unbreakable. They share memories, dreams, and the desire to make something of themselves. But as they get deeper into the drug trade, their loyalty is tested. The film uses the betrayal between the characters as a metaphor for the fragility of trust in a world that thrives on survival and self-interest. Rico's betrayal of Ace, in particular, is a moment of symbolic significance. It's not just a personal betrayal, but a representation of how easily loyalty can be eroded when money, power, and desperation enter the picture. The gradual breakdown of their friendship highlights how the pursuit of wealth can tear apart even the strongest of bonds. The film also uses color and lighting as symbols. Notice how the tones shift throughout the movie, from the darker, grittier scenes when the characters are struggling to make it out, to the brighter, more opulent moments when they're enjoying the fruits of their criminal success. The stark contrast between these settings is symbolic of the duality the characters face, the tension between their roots and the dream they're trying to chase. The opulent scenes may seem glamorous, but they are bathed in a kind of cold, almost sterile light, suggesting that the wealth they've gained is hollow and comes with an inevitable cost. Another layer of symbolism comes from the streets themselves. The narrow, claustrophobic spaces the characters move through are often symbolic of the tight corners they find themselves in, both literally and metaphorically. It's as if the characters are constantly running out of space to maneuver, a visual cue that emphasizes their entrapment within the very world they're trying to escape. The world of drug dealing is shown as one with limited choices, where every move is a gamble and where escape is a myth. The film constantly places the characters in situations where they can't see a way out, and that sense of confinement is a metaphor for the way systemic issues, like poverty and limited opportunities, box them into a life of crime. And let's not forget the cars. In Paid in Full, the characters' cars are more than just vehicles, they're status symbols. But their cars also represent the temporary nature of their success. The cars are often pristine, gleaming with luxury, but they are fleeting symbols of power. The way the characters treat their cars, whether it's cruising around town or flaunting them to others, speaks to how they view themselves. But just as the cars are flashy and beautiful, they are also symbols of the fragility of the characters' positions. Wealth and status may come quickly, but they're just as easily lost. The cars reflect this cycle of rise and fall, a visual metaphor for the characters' lives. In the end, Paid in Full is a masterclass in visual storytelling, using symbolism and metaphors not just to tell a story, but to deepen the themes and messages within it. It's not just a movie about drug dealers, it's a film about the price of ambition, the fragility of loyalty, and the illusion of escape. Each visual cue, the setting, the cars, the money, adds a layer of meaning, turning what could have been a simple crime drama into a profound exploration of human desires, choices, and consequences. It's a film that invites the audience to read between the lines, to look past the surface and see the deeper truths lurking just below. Paid in Full doesn't belong to a franchise or series, but its historical context is rich and integral to its narrative. The film is a snapshot of a particular moment in time, the late 80s and early 90s, a period that saw the rapid rise of the crack cocaine epidemic in urban America. This is a time when the allure of fast money through drug dealing was more than just a criminal enterprise. It was a survival mechanism for many who found themselves trapped in systemic poverty, with limited opportunities to break out. The film's portrayal of Harlem and the drug trade during this period is not just about telling a story. It's about painting an authentic picture of the environment in which these characters existed. It's not a history lesson, but it is deeply rooted in the real-life struggles faced by communities during the crack epidemic. The world of Paid in Full is immersive because it doesn't just focus on the glamour of fast money, but also on the grim realities that came with it, the violence, the distrust, and the eventual destruction of the people involved in the trade. This historical backdrop isn't exaggerated or romanticized. Instead, the film reflects the truth of what Harlem and many inner-city neighborhoods were going through. The rise of crack cocaine was a devastating blow to these communities, leading to economic collapse, escalating violence, and broken families. Paid in Full does an excellent job of weaving this real history into its narrative, not through heavy exposition, but through the actions, decisions, and struggles of its characters. Ace, Mitch, and Rico are, in many ways, products of their environment. Their choices are shaped by the harsh realities of their world. The lack of education, the absence of economic opportunity, and the ever-present threat of violence that defined life in neighborhoods like Harlem during this time. The historical accuracy comes through in the film's attention to detail, from the fashion to the music to the attitude of the streets. The characters wear clothes that reflect the era, bright, bold, and emblematic of the hip-hop culture that was rising in prominence at the time. The music, particularly the use of hip-hop and rap, ties directly into the atmosphere of the film, underscoring the connection between the street culture of the time and the broader cultural movements of the 80s and 90s. The hip-hop scene was not only the soundtrack of the streets, but also a form of expression for many young people who felt overlooked by mainstream society. Paid in Full does a great job of capturing this connection, creating an immersive experience that feels authentic to the time period. The film also touches on the societal issues that were at the forefront of national conversations in the late 80s and early 90s: racial inequality, police brutality, and the war on drugs. These themes aren't just background noise. They are central to understanding why the characters make the choices they do. The streets are a battlefield, not just for survival, but for control and autonomy in a world that seems to offer no other viable option for success. The portrayal of law enforcement and the government's role in the crack epidemic is implicit but powerful. It's clear that the system, the same system that was supposed to provide opportunities for people like Ace, Mitch, and Rico, had failed them. In terms of how Paid in Full fits into the historical narrative, it's a microcosm of the broader social issues of the time. It's not a film that sets out to tackle these issues head-on, but rather one that reflects them in the lives of its characters. The way the film shows the cyclical nature of crime, poverty, and violence provides a commentary on how hard it is to escape once you're caught in the web. There's no easy way out, and that's part of the tragedy the film conveys. The film's portrayal of drug dealing and its impact on the community is historically accurate in its depiction of how young men were drawn into the trade, often with little understanding of the consequences or even the risks involved. The allure of wealth and power, often glamorized in popular culture, is shown here as the poison it really is. The film doesn't shy away from showing the dangers that come with this lifestyle, not just the legal consequences, but the emotional toll, the loss of friendships, the violence, and the destruction of one's sense of self. In many ways, Paid in Full serves as a historical document, capturing the zeitgeist of the era and offering a look at the personal stories behind the headlines of the crack epidemic. It doesn't offer a grand political statement or a sweeping historical overview, but it does give us an intimate look at how these larger societal issues were lived and experienced by those at the heart of them. It's a slice of history that's not just about the drugs or the crime, but about the human experience within that environment, the choices, the consequences, and the lost potential of a generation. The film, in essence, invites the viewer to reflect on how far we've come and how much further we still need to go in understanding the roots of urban poverty, the prison industrial complex, and the lasting effects of the crack epidemic. Its portrayal of Harlem is not just accurate but deeply immersive, transporting us to a time when survival was often a matter of making impossible choices, and ambition could either lift you out of your circumstances or bury you deeper. Paid in Full doesn't just present history, it makes history personal, making its characters' struggles feel immediate and painfully relatable. When you look at Paid in Full, it's pretty clear that its relatively modest budget didn't hold it back from delivering a powerful, impactful film. With a budget of around $3 million, the movie didn't have the extravagant resources that big budget blockbusters or even other crime dramas at the time had. And yet, it feels far from low budget. It's an example of how creativity and resourcefulness can go a long way when you're working with limited financial means. There's nothing overly flashy about the production, no sprawling action scenes or elaborate special effects, but what you get instead is a deeply focused narrative, strong performances, and a rich atmosphere that doesn't need much in terms of spectacle to make its impact. The film's strength comes from its grounded, raw realism, which doesn't demand extravagant sets or expensive camera tricks. Instead, the budget was spent wisely, focusing on the things that matter most: character development, the authenticity of the environment, and a soundtrack that captures the essence of the time period. The film's aesthetic is simple yet effective, reflecting the gritty, street-level world it's portraying. The attention to detail in the fashion, the cars, the streets of Harlem, all of these elements make the movie feel true to its time and place, something that's hard to achieve with a modest budget, but something that Paid in Full pulls off beautifully. When it comes to the box office, Paid in Full didn't exactly set the world on fire, but it was far from a flop. It earned about $7.5 million in its domestic run, which, when compared to its budget, can be seen as a solid return on investment. It didn't explode in theaters, but it found an audience, especially in urban and hip-hop communities, and it's one of those films that grew in popularity over time. Its impact was more of a slow burn, spreading through word of mouth rather than through massive marketing campaigns. The film's success wasn't about the size of its opening weekend, but about the cultural resonance it had with its audience. People who saw it were quick to talk about it, and it became a favorite among those who appreciated its authentic portrayal of street life. Part of the reason Paid in Full didn't have a massive box office opening can be attributed to its marketing, or lack thereof. The film wasn't heavily promoted in the way that other crime dramas of the time were. It wasn't part of a big studio-backed franchise or bolstered by a major A-list star. This limited marketing meant that it didn't attract as wide an audience as some of its contemporaries. However, over time, the film found its place in the cultural conversation, particularly within the hip-hop and urban film communities, where it garnered a following. The film's themes about ambition, loyalty, and the cost of success spoke to people who recognized the struggles of the characters on a personal level, and that's where the film's real success lay. It wasn't just about making money at the box office, it was about leaving a lasting impression on the audience it did reach. Audience reception played a big role in the film's longevity. While critics were generally positive, it was the word of mouth and cultural relevance that turned Paid in Full into a classic. It became a staple in discussions of 90s urban films and often gets referenced when people talk about the rise of hip-hop culture in mainstream media. The film may not have made huge waves at first, but it definitely created a lasting impact, especially when it came to shaping how stories about the streets and drug culture were told in Hollywood. One of the things that makes the film resonate long after its release is how well it's held up over the years. It hasn't aged poorly like some movies from the early 2000s that haven't stood the test of time. Instead, it remains relevant because of its authenticity, its rawness, and its ability to speak to the universal themes of ambition, betrayal, and the pursuit of wealth at any cost. In a way, Paid in Full has become a bit of a cult classic, not because of massive box office earnings, but because it struck a chord with the people who saw it and who continued to talk about it long after it left theaters. Looking at the bigger picture, Paid in Full stands as a testament to the idea that a film doesn't need a massive budget or wide commercial appeal to be considered a success. It wasn't just a box office hit, it was a cultural one, finding a place in the hearts of those who appreciated its honest portrayal of the struggles of the streets. The financial success may not have been astronomical, but its long-term influence and place in the pantheon of urban cinema are undeniable. And in that way, Paid in Full is a perfect example of how a film can succeed not by the numbers on a spreadsheet, but by the impact it leaves on its audience. If you're itching to dive into the world of Paid in Full, you're in luck. It's available across a range of platforms, and finding a way to experience it isn't difficult. Of course, this movie isn't likely to be found in theaters unless there's a special screening, but it's made its way onto multiple streaming platforms where it can be enjoyed from the comfort of your own home. The most accessible way to catch it is on digital rental platforms. Whether it's Amazon, iTunes, or Google Play, you can easily rent it for a few bucks, grab some popcorn, and dive into the gritty world of Harlem without leaving your couch. But if you're someone who loves the feel of physical media, there's a little bit of nostalgia in that, right? You can find Paid in Full on DVD or Blu-ray. Now, don't just go with any version. Go for the one with special features, because if you love films with depth and culture, you'll want the added context. The commentary, interviews, and behind-the-scenes material can offer you a whole new perspective on how the film was made, what went into capturing that raw, authentic vibe, and how it reflects a real historical moment. Now, if you really want to make the most out of the experience, streaming is the best way to go. With high-quality HD streaming options available, you can catch all the sharp details, like the textures of Harlem streets, the fashions, the atmosphere, and feel even more immersed in the world the film creates. Streaming services like Netflix or Hulu often have a rotating library of films, so keep your eyes peeled. At times, Paid in Full pops up on these platforms, and it's just the right place to stream it when you want something accessible and high quality. But here's a pro tip. If you want to really get the fullest impact of the film, it's best to watch it in a setting where you can just zone in and let yourself be transported into this world. The story is deeply emotional, and the way it plays with themes of ambition, loyalty, and the consequences of success really hits hard when you're watching it uninterrupted. A dark room, some good sound, and a quiet environment where you can fully appreciate the music, the street sounds, and the raw dialogue, that's the way to go. While watching Paid in Full in a group or with friends who haven't seen it yet can also be fun, there's nothing like the thrill of sharing a hidden gem and seeing people's reactions. The movie's impact is definitely heightened when you can focus on its nuances. The intensity of the performances, the atmosphere, and the evolving relationships between the characters all need your attention. The deeper you sink into the character's struggles, the more you'll appreciate the layers of meaning the film presents. In the end, there's no wrong way to watch the film, but if you're looking for that immersive experience, you want a space where you can just settle in and allow yourself to fully absorb the movie's texture and vibe. Whether it's on a big screen or small, through streaming or a physical copy, Paid in Full is a film that rewards attention, reflection, and above all, a genuine connection to the world it portrays.